7 months. That's all it took for one of the most respected minds in modern football to go from Real Madrid's great hope to a cautionary tale. Everyone has an opinion on Xabi Alonso right now. Some call him the next great manager of his generation. Others wrote him off the moment Real Madrid let him go. But almost everything you've been told about him is incomplete. Nobody's really telling you the full story of what actually happened. To understand it, you first need to understand something extraordinary. Almost no manager on earth received the coaching education Alonso did as a player. He played under Pep Guardiola, Jose Mourinho, Carlo Ancelotti, and Rafael Benitez, plus years in a Spain national team setup shaped by Luis Aragonés. Guardiola taught him positional play, the obsession with space and possession, making the opponent run in the wrong direction. Mourinho taught him the opposite, ruthlessness, defending as a unit, making winning ugly when winning pretty isn't available. Ancelotti taught him man management, keeping a dressing room of superstars pointed the same direction. Benitez taught him tactical detail and preparation. And the national team taught him identity, building around collective soul rather than individual ego. Most coaches inherit one philosophy. Alonso absorbed all of them and built something new. That's the entire foundation of what he did at Leverkusen. That foundation was tested early. In his first Champions League game in charge, Leverkusen dominated Porto, 17 shots to 5, and lost 3-0. Most managers convinced themselves they were unlucky. Alonso restructured his whole approach instead, leaning harder into counterattacking and defensive solidity, and stopped chasing beauty for its own sake. He learned a similar lesson against Mourinho's Roma in the Europa League semi-final, where Leverkusen had 23 shots to Roma's 1 and still went out. He filed it away rather than getting angry. That willingness to adapt is what actually separates him. To understand Alonso the manager, you have to understand Alonso the player. At Liverpool, he became the first player in Premier League history to complete over 1,000 successful passes in a single season, effectively controlling the rhythm of every match he played. Steven Gerrard has openly admitted Alonso's departure affected his own form the following season.
When you left, it broke me heart.
When a club captain says that, it tells you what kind of player you're talking about. At Real Madrid, arriving in 2009 alongside Cristiano Ronaldo and Kaká, Alonso wasn't the biggest name in the building. But he started almost every match he was fit for, helped Madrid to a club record 96 points, and earned the nickname La Barbaroja out of pure fan affection. His final chapter as a player came back under Guardiola at Bayern Munich, where he didn't just learn what Guardiola wanted, he understood why, sitting inside those sessions, absorbing the logic from the source. On top of all that, he speaks Spanish, English, German, and Basque fluently, a real advantage in a dressing room full of different nationalities. So when Real Madrid appointed him head coach in the summer of 2025, it felt inevitable. A World Cup winner, a Champions League winner, fresh off an unbeaten title-winning season in Germany. Madrid didn't just want a coach. They wanted a philosophy, someone who could give the club an identity that outlasted any single superstar. And Alonso wasn't a stranger walking into an unfamiliar building. He'd worn the shirt and won trophies there. That history was supposed to shortcut the adjustment period. Instead, it may have raised expectations even further. For a while, it looked like it might work. Madrid won 10 of their first 11 La Liga games under him, but cracks started showing. Reported tension with Vinicius Jr. over a substitution he was unhappy with, even in a match Madrid won, and a broader sense that Alonso's authority wasn't fully landing with every senior player. By January, those cracks became a canyon. Real Madrid walked into the Spanish Supercup final against Barcelona in Jeddah, needing a statement, and suffered a 3-2 collapse instead. Alonso told Spanish television afterward that the team needed to move on quickly. Less than 24 hours later, the club moved on without him. Real Madrid announced the split by mutual agreement after 233 days, one of the shortest managerial reigns in the club's modern history. Álvaro Arbeloa, his former teammate, was promoted from the reserve side to replace him. Reports at the time described a coach who felt undermined by a minority inside that dressing room, despite genuine efforts to build bridges. For months afterward, Alonso vanished from the spotlight completely. No interviews, no explanations, just silence, while pundits picked apart every decision from the outside. That silence is exactly what made it significant when he finally addressed it publicly. He didn't hide behind excuses. He called it a scar, his word, one that reshaped how he sees himself, as a coach and as a person. He admitted that during that period, he genuinely didn't watch much football at all. A striking admission from a man whose entire identity has been built around studying the game obsessively. Not because he'd stopped loving it, but because Madrid had taken something out of him that needed time to return. It's tempting to file those 7 months away as a simple failure. That misses what actually happened. He inherited a squad carrying real internal tension and still had them competitive at the top of the table, including a rare win over Barcelona in a Clásico. When it fell apart, it wasn't really a tactical collapse. By most credible accounts, it was a power dynamics problem. A dressing room where certain players' influence with ownership outweighed the manager's authority to make decisions stick. You can't fairly blame a coach for losing a fight for control. The institution was never fully going to let him win. There's a real lesson here for anyone who thinks management is purely tactics on a whiteboard. Alonso is one of the most tactically literate coaches of his generation, and none of that fully protected him once the human side of the job broke down. Man management, reading a room full of players with their own egos and their own idea of how the team should look, is arguably the harder skill, and it never shows up on a tactics board. Which brings the story to now. Alonso didn't stay away forever. This July, he took over at Chelsea, rebuilding a club that spent years searching for exactly the identity he was supposed to build in Madrid. It's a smaller stage in some ways, with more room to actually work. And there's something almost poetic about the timing. Real Madrid, in the meantime, eventually turned to Jose Mourinho, a manager who's built his entire career thriving inside exactly the kind of pressure that broke Alonso. Two completely different answers to the same impossible job. At Chelsea, he inherits a different kind of test. Look at what he did with players nobody believed in at Leverkusen. Granit Xhaka, written off at Arsenal, rebuilt into a Champions League-level midfielder. Alejandro Grimaldo, overlooked, turned into one of Europe's best wingbacks. Victor Boniface, unproven, developed into a Champions League striker. Now picture what he can do with players who are already elite. Declan Rice, Enzo Fernandez, Moises Caicedo, Cole Palmer. His task isn't to fix them, it's to unlock them, building a structure that lets each one play to their strengths. Add in the patience he showed at Leverkusen 3 full seasons before that title arrived, and you're looking at a genuinely uncommon coaching profile in an era where managers get 8 bad weeks before the axe falls. He made mistakes in Madrid. He lost that job. But the Porto defeat made him smarter. The Roma exit added a tool to his arsenal. And by his own account, the Real Madrid experience didn't finish him either. It gave him information wrapped in a wound that's since had time to close. Filtered through a man who's now also survived one of the most demanding failures modern football can hand a coach, and chosen to talk about it honestly instead of pretending it never happened. Whether that's enough to make Chelsea work is still an open question, but the man rebuilding at Stamford Bridge right now is not the one who walked into the Bernabeu with all that promise a year ago. So here's what I want to know. Was Xabi Alonso failed by Real Madrid? Or did Real Madrid simply prove he wasn't ready? Drop your take below.